Welcome to Intro to Philosophy 1010 for the summer 2019 session. I am Timothy Desmond. I'm the instructor for this class. Here's our book, Introduction to World Philosophy, a Multicultural Reader. So, this is the first time I've taught this class with this book on the online version. So I'll be developing the YouTube videos where I'll be going over the readings in this book as the class progresses. And today I put up the potential exam questions for exam 1, and I'll talk about that. But in this video I'll be going over the syllabus, and then I'll be going over the way we'll be progressing through this book and the basic ideas we'll be discussing in the class. So it's a 6-week intensive course, and I hope everyone has the book by now. I know some people will not have ordered it until the class started, so I think by now everyone has the book. Again, this is the book that you want to have. So it's a lot of reading. Some of them are very complicated, and I know this is an intro class. I'm not expecting anyone to have mastered any of these concepts. So one thing I think I should advise you to do is just look at the potential exam questions, which will be up before the end of each. So the exam questions for exam 1 are up now. The exam questions for exam 2 will be up before exam 1 is due, so that you can guide your reading by the exam questions. So the exams are broken down as it's discussed in the syllabus. Into Part A and Part B, you choose one from a variety of questions in Part A and write a 250-word essay on it. You pick one of those. There's 9 options for exam 1. And then for Part B, you pick 2 of the potential questions, and each one is at least a 100-word essay, and that counts for 50% of the grade. So each of the short answers is 25 points, and the long answer is worth 50 points. So if you've got 9 questions and the exam is going to ask you to only choose one, well, whatever question you choose to address in your exam, that's the reading that you should focus on most intensely. You should read all of the questions, because in the discussion forums, which is the second part of this class, I'll be creating wider ranging questions that will require you to read almost all of the readings. But I realize in this short amount of time and this complicated material, you're not going to be able to reread a lot of these readings. You should read them over once, but this kind of material, it's hard to understand by reading it just once through. Some of the material's straightforward and easy to understand, but a lot of it takes rereading and rereading. So if you read through the book and then choose the exam questions that you're going to answer, and then focus on those readings and reread them, and then watch the videos that I'll be creating for each of those readings, then you'll be able to do very well in this class. If you do that, if you do those 3 things, read through the book, and then reread the exam questions that you're going to be addressing and the discussion forum questions, and then look at the videos, you should have no problem getting an A, even if you've never been introduced to ideas like these before. So again, don't be intimidated by the complexity of these readings, because you've got a lot of structure to help you focus on getting a good grade. So it's a good intro class. I want you to be exposed to these great ideas over the past 2.5 millennia that we'll be addressing in the book, but I don't want you to stress out about the grade, so you can strategize the reading to get a good grade. So let me now, having said that, go over just a little bit of the detail in the syllabus. You can read it yourself online, but I just want to touch on it here. So there are 2 elements to the class: exams and the discussion forums, which is the participation grade. So I'm looking at the syllabus now. So there'll be 4 exams, and I'll be counting the best 3 grades. So I'll be dropping one of them. After you take the first exam, you'll see on the grade column that it's automatically dropped. That's because it's the only exam grade you will have had by that point, so it's the lowest. Then when you take exam 2, if it's higher, then exam 1 will still be dropped. If it's lower than your exam 1 grade, then that one will be dropped. If you miss an exam or skip an exam, that will be the one that you drop. So sometimes students just they want to skip an exam altogether. Well, then that is the one that will be dropped. So there's no need for makeup exams, because if you miss one, that's just the one that's going to get dropped. And again, I went over the way to prepare for the exams. Just look at the potential exam questions, which are going to be in the learning modules. So if you look under the content tab of our website and click on that, you can then look down and see the learning modules. If you click on learning modules, then they open up to learning module 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I've broken the class down into these 4 learning modules, and the exam questions will be, for exam 2 will be in learning module 2. The videos that I'll be putting up starting tonight for exam 1 will be in learning module 1. I'm also going to include a YouTube tab under the content tab for optional YouTube videos that I'll be referring to throughout this class, current cosmology, because in this class, these ancient and more modern philosophers, they talk a lot about the nature of the self, the nature of the cosmos, what's the relationship between the two. And it's just easier, I think, for us in the 21st century to understand what they're saying if we can put it in the context of academic cosmology today, which is very bizarre, as are many of these readings. So that's why I include that, but you don't need to know cosmology for this class. I think it's just a helpful analogy, it's a helpful learning tool. But so there'll be optional YouTube videos that you'll see there. So going back to the syllabus, I'm going to drop the lowest of 4 exam grades, and so on to the participation grade. All right, so the exams count for 60% of the grade. Each exam that counts, which is the 3 exams that count, are 20% of your grade. So 60% of the overall grade comes from the 3 exams that count. The other 40% of your grade comes from the discussion forums. So there's 4 discussion forums, and I dropped the lowest grade of those as well. If you miss a discussion forum, that one will be dropped. Even if you miss, for example, posting your initial post, so as you can read in the syllabus, you're supposed to post your initial opinion to the question that is in the discussion forum. So discussion forum 1, let me just go over there so that we can have an example of what we'll be doing here. So discussion forum 1, if you go in our class to the discussions tab up at the top, and if you click on that, you'll see discussion. Well, you'll see first the introduction, hello from the teacher, then introductions, ask me. That's where you can post questions for everyone to see, and I'll answer it, or other students might answer it. Discussion 1. So in part 1 of our book, I'll just read the question for discussion 1. In part 1 of our book, we read about 2 basic philosophical opinions about the nature of the self: the Hindu Platonic belief in an eternal reincarnating soul, and the Buddhist Humean, that's David Hume, the Buddhist Humean belief that there is no soul. Which of these basic positions about the self do you think is more likely to be true? Why? Explain your reasons. Do not summarize here. The why is more important than the which in making your post. Remember to use short, pertinent quotes to support your answers. So you have to read about the Hindu texts and Plato's texts, as well as the Buddhist texts and David Hume, to adequately answer this discussion question. And you have to post an initial post, which counts for half of your discussion forum grade on that. And you won't be able to read other people's posts until you post your initial opinion. So the way to do that is to read through those texts and formulate an opinion. Just you can use outside sources if you want to help to formulate your opinion, but I don't want you to support your answer with anything other than our textbook. because that's what I'll be grading on, knowledge of the textbook. So whatever opinions you have, it's fine with me. You can say, oh, I like the Hindu Platonic belief that there is a soul, or I like the Buddhist Humean belief that there is no soul. What I'll be grading on is the knowledge of the text. Did this student read the text? Did they spend some time thinking deeply about this deep question? And did they support their answer by referring to the textbook? And so that's how you'll be doing it. And I'll be putting up these videos to help you formulate answers. But if you just read the text and think deeply about it and honestly answer, giving your opinion, then that's all you need. You know, just if you do kind of a slapdash quick answer, which isn't meeting the minimum 200-word requirement, and you don't support your answer with any reading from the text, and you just kind of base it on just the top of your head, which sometimes students do. Oh, there's one belief that says there is a soul, there's one that says there isn't. Oh, well, I believe in a soul, therefore, without really proving to me that you have done any of the reading at all. So, again, the way to ensure yourself to get an A is to root all of your answers in the textbook. So those are the discussion forums. Then after you post your initial post, you will then respond to at least 2 other students' initial posts, their opinions. You can say, oh, you answered the same way I did, but oh, you had another explanation, which is interesting. So just put some time into thinking about what they said and what you think about what they said based on your common reading of the textbook. So if I can tell that you've studied the pertinent texts, then you'll get an A for that assignment. And so just put some time in and read the text and try to support your answers with short, pertinent quotes from the book. So there's 4 discussion forums. You should do them all. So if you just improve your chances of getting a better grade if you do them all. But again, if you miss one, that's okay because it'll be dropped. But even if you miss, posting the original post, you can still post 2 responses and you'll get at least potentially half the grade, which is better than nothing. But, you should answer at least 3 discussion forums as well as you can, because that'll count. Those 3 will be averaged to become 40% of your grade. So that's it. That's the 2 elements of the class. It's pretty straightforward, which I hope, it's a simple, straightforward requirements, which I hope can compensate for the complexity of the material. So now onto this book. So Introduction to World Philosophy. And I've taught with this book now 1 full semester, having read it through once, and then now I'm reading through it again. It takes some time. We were previously using another textbook, 4 Fundamental Questions. For 5 years I read through that one, or more than that. So sometimes when I'm thinking about the philosophers in this book, I'm still remembering the readings from the other textbook. But at any rate, let me just go over what we'll be going into in this book. So as you see in the syllabus, we're starting with part 2 of the book, Philosophy of Mind and Self, which starts on page 205. And then the reason I skipped part 1, which is what we'll be ending the class with, is because part 1 is ethics. What should I do? Who should I be? What kind of a person should I be? In the previous textbook, the question of ethics was the final of 4 sections of the book, which I think is appropriate, because before you can answer what should I do, you have to define what am I? What is a self? And then you also have to understand what is a self, you have to understand the relationship between your mind and the cosmos. Is there an individual mind? Is there one cosmic mind? Is there a cosmos at all? Is it just a dream? What is real? That's in this book, it's called Metaphysics. So these questions need to be answered before you can answer the question, what should I do? Which is ethics. So we conclude the class by going back to part 1 of the book, which is ethics. And we start the class with part 2, Philosophy of Mind and Self, beginning with the Indian philosophy of the concept of the self, the Hindu philosophy and the Buddhist philosophy primarily. So the Hindus say we're an eternal soul, each of us, and then they vary slightly on, is there one supreme self in whom we all are absorbed, or do we maintain our individuality? But the main point is the Hindu philosophy based on the Upanishads believes in an eternal soul that's related to some cosmic soul, whereas the Buddhists say there's no individual personal soul at all. And that's the fundamental dichotomy of the Indian philosophy of the mind or self. There is a soul, or what they call it, Atman, or there is no soul, Anatman, no Atman. And then we'll be going on through the Greeks, Plato and Aristotle, then into the modern period, Descartes, John Locke, David Hume, and African philosophy of mind. Amo's critique of Descartes, so some African intellectuals responding to European and ancient Greek concepts of the self. So then, let me turn this phone off. So that'll be the first part of this class, which will be exam 1 and discussion form 1. The next part is epistemology, theories of knowledge. What can I know? What is knowledge? What is it possible for me to know? So in that question, there's two basic answers. One of them is empiricism. I can only know what I perceive through my 5 sense organs. If I can see it, smell it, taste it, touch it, or hear it, it's real. Otherwise, it's imaginary. I can't smell or hear or taste or touch a soul or God, therefore those are imaginary creations. That's called empiricism. If you can't observe it with one of your physical sense organs, it's not real. The other side is idealism, is one of the ways to describe it, or rationalism, which is the idea that we are eternal souls, and imprinted on each eternal soul are eternal forms of knowledge, or eternal ideas of knowledge. We can have knowledge of everything because the soul is basically made of these eternal ideas of knowledge. One way that's described is that the ideas in God's mind, by which the ideas to which God referred while creating the universe, are imprinted on each individual soul. So we can have knowledge of everything because the eternal source of knowledge is our own soul, which is rooted into the supreme soul. Plato said that. St. Augustine followed him to some degree. So that's what epistemology is. Part 4 of the book, metaphysics. So what does metaphysics mean? The study of what is real. Plato's cave allegory is included in this, which is, I think, more in the 20th, or now the 21st century. In 1999, the movie The Matrix came out with Keanu Reeves. He was the one. We all live in a computer simulation, and he escaped to release us from our slavery to the intelligent computer matrix race. Well, that was based, or at least it's extremely similar to Plato's cave allegory. Is this real, or is this a dream? Is this some kind of a simulated world? That's metaphysics. What is real? It's hard to differentiate that kind of a question from what is a self. So they're all intermingled with each other, these questions. But again, there'll be different. The book starts with the ancient Indians because it goes chronologically for the most part, and then the Greeks. What are these different opinions? And usually it goes from an atheistic to a theistic perspective. And also the realists. So this world, what you see is what you get. That's one opinion, the realists. And the other opinion is, oh, this is all mental concoctions. The mind creates this. There's no way to tell what's real. That's another opinion that we'll be going over. So then part 5 of the book, philosophical theology. So that is just the different ideas of what is God. And unlike the other sections of the book, this one for the most part is theistic. It doesn't go back and forth between theists and atheists, but it just goes over the different religious traditions and their philosophical opinions about those religions. St. Augustine, Avicenna, talking about Muslim philosophy, Sufi mysticism, and then there's Hume is the only atheist that I don't even know if Hume was really an atheist, but he was an empiricist, and he was saying we can't know what God is or a soul is because we can't see or smell or touch or hear or taste God. And then finally, for the last part of the class, we'll be going back to part 1 of the book, which is ethics. How should I live? What is the right thing to do? What is a moral life? And we'll be, again, starting with the Hindu ideas and going through the Chinese and the ancient Greeks with Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. So that is the book that we'll be going over. And if you do the readings, and it's a lot of reading, but it's a college class, and you get, I think, this is one of the classes that you should take the opportunity. You've paid the money to take the class. How often in your life are you going to have the time to sit and meditate about the classical and modern ideas of what is a self, what is reality? These kinds of philosophical questions that affect everybody from every profession. When do you have the time to really sit down and formulate some opinions guided by the best opinions preserved through history? Not often. So you might as well take advantage, read through the book. If you don't understand some part of the book, just keep reading and then read the potential exam questions and choose the ones that you feel most comfortable answering, and then reread those sections and maybe focus more on the videos I create for those readings to formulate the best answer you can. And so I don't want people stressing out about the class. I'm not a hard grader, but the best way to get an A is to include pertinent quotes from the book just to let me know this person read the text and took the time to digest the material before answering the question. If you just put in that time, then you will excel in the class. So let me, now I'll be going on to create the first video about Hindu and Buddhist philosophy, and I'll be covering the pertinent exam questions related to the Hindu and Buddhist philosophy in the next video.